Welcome to the Sincerely God podcast. I'm Sarah, and I believe that God is speaking to all of us all the time and in many different ways. The primary way that I listen is through two-way journaling. And on this podcast, I share excerpts from my journaling time with God, which are really inspirational messages spoken from the perspective of God to you. I'll talk more about what two-way journaling is and explore other methods which may be helpful for you to listen to God in your own unique way. I'm just an ordinary person who gets to hear from an extraordinary God, and I believe you can too. Thanks for joining. Hi everyone. So the excerpt that I'm going to be sharing today is just talking about trials and tragedies and just difficulties that we still come across in this world. And I feel like it gives a beautiful perspective that we can consider that even though we're facing difficulty, God is still with us. So this is something that God had shared with me. My child, do not be dismayed by the sins of this world, the tragedies and trials. I am with you and in you and for you. I will make a way for each of my children. I will use every trial in this broken world to draw them closer to me. You know my ways. You have experienced my blessing and provision through many of your own trials. Continue to trust, my child. See me through the brokenness around you. See me calling my children to me, to my arms of comfort and safety. The safety I offer does not match up to the world's standards. You will still experience pain and suffering in this life, but your soul will have rest and comfort and peace. This is the kind of safety found in me. My peace lasts forever. My ways are eternal. Abide in me, my child. Abide in my kingdom. Receive my peace and share it with others. Tell others about my peace and provision and glory. Let them see it reflected in your own life. Shine your light for all to see. Do not hold back. Do not be timid. Have confidence in what you know to be true. Be strong and courageous, my child. You have my strength in you. Your courage is already within you. Take hold of it. Be a warrior. Be a warrior in my kingdom of heaven on earth. Go through your day, my child, holding tightly to my hand and leaning in, for I am forever by your side. You do not face anything alone or on your own. I am in you and with you and for you. I will never leave you. Trust in me. Trust, my child. Trust completely. Let everything else go. Let go of fear and doubt and everything in between. I am all you need. I am in control. I will supply your every need. I have already prepared the way for you. Follow my prepared path. Walk with me along it. See all I have prepared for you, the beauty and joy of every perfect gift. Yes, there will be difficulty, but it is nothing compared to my glory. You will see my glory in ways you never dreamed of. Be open, my child. Be open for all I am giving you and showing you. Receive. Receive and believe. Yes, that is all you need in this life. A connection to me and an open heart to receive with full belief in my provision. I am always helping you, my child. Now receive from me. Receive this gift of strength for today. Yes, receive my peace. Now go about your day and keep me close to your heart and mind. I am with you. I think so often we can find ourselves facing tragedy, facing difficulty, facing things that we never wanted to have to face, never wanted to experience. And in those situations, I think often, right, we want to understand, and often that is trying to find someone to blame. And sometimes there's things in this life that there's no one to blame, right? If there's some kind of illness that occurs, often we can find ourselves in this place of blaming God, and it can become a disconnect. It can become a separator. And in truth, we're never promised that we won't have difficulty in this life. And that's probably one of the biggest questions, the biggest difficulties when it comes to, do we believe in God? Do we believe that God is good? Is when we find ourselves in these situations, or we see it in the world around us. There's so much tragedy that happens in the world around us. It's hard to have that coexist with the belief in a good God. And there's so much into that I can't spend time in one episode to just talk about more deeply and well, why do bad things happen and all of that. I do actually think there's some rationale behind the way that this world works. But the key that is being communicated in this message is that no matter what, there is a peace, there is a safety that looks different that we have within us, that we have through our connection with God, that we can face a difficult situation. And there are multiple ways that we can walk through a hard time. There are multiple perspectives and how we approach it, this view that we have and this ability to connect and be open to receive from God, that can dramatically change the way that we experience a difficult situation, the way that we experience a tragedy or a hardship. And I mean, I think I can speak from my own personal experience with chronic pain. There were seasons of that journey that I didn't have this perspective of being open to receive peace, being open to receive what God could give me, right? He says, be strong and courageous. We have to be strong and courageous when we're facing challenging things, but recognizing that our strength and our courage comes from beyond us, that it's not something that we just have to carry on our own shoulders. And so I walked through periods of life where I was carrying on my own shoulders, and it made it so much heavier. It made it so much more difficult. It took away the ability to receive this peace that is beyond. And I've had times where I've walked through difficult things where I have been able to keep an open perspective, where I've been able to lean in to my connection with God, to recognize that I have a source that is beyond my own, that I don't need to carry and attempt to control and do all the things on my own. And it's a completely different experience. Yes, it's still hard. Yes, it's still challenging. Yes, it still requires strength and courage and perseverance, but it allows me to recognize that I'm not alone. It allows me to walk through that situation with just a different lightness, a weight that isn't on my shoulders, and it changes everything. And so I just encourage you to consider, what he's saying here, that he says, the safety I offer does not match up to the world's standards. You will still experience pain and suffering in this life. He doesn't promise that we won't, but your soul will have rest and comfort and peace. This is the kind of safety found in me, that we can find comfort. We can find peace as we rest in God, as we connect with that purest, truest, most authentic part of ourselves, that we can find peace in that we can find renewed hope and strength and perseverance and an ability to continue in another day, to continue through another moment. And sometimes it takes this constant, intentional reminding to tune into that internal peace, to recognize that it can be a better situation, not because the circumstances have changed, but because your perspective has changed, because you're recognizing that you don't have to carry it on your own. And this being able to release the fear and the doubt and those things, that thinking that you need to control it yourself, that if you don't control it, if you don't carry it, then it won't work. Being able to release that has a dramatic impact as well. I mean, how many times are we going through facing a challenging situation, and how much of the difficulty, the turmoil, the negative, the stress, everything that we're experiencing, how much of that is actually in our own hearts and minds? Because we're feeling anxiety. We're allowing our mind to spin. We're trying to grasp at all the things. And we're letting fear drive so much of what we're doing and how we're responding to things. But fear is actually a lie. Yes, difficulty is real. Danger is real. But fear doesn't have to be there. Fear is actually something that we can intentionally, I'm not saying it's easy, but we can intentionally release that. And in lieu of experiencing that fear, we can actually connect to peace. We can connect to courage. We can connect to hope. And it can completely change the way that we experience a situation. And I think so much of that weariness that we experience when we're facing challenges is because of that internal turmoil, because of the fear and the doubt and this trying to resolve, kind of spinning in place, so to speak, because we're doing whatever we possibly can just to feel like we can do something, just to feel like we're having some control over something, when really, if we can lean in, right? Reach out to his hand, lean in to God in us, with us, for us. Believe that he has a plan. Believe that he has the strength that we need to persevere. Believe that he has strategy and solutions, and there is a path forward that, sure, it may be a difficult path, right? Climbing a mountain is hard work, but there is a path that we're not just battling on our own. You know, I've had some personal experiences going through hard things where God has told me, you can't avoid the battle. Like, there's actually purpose in going through the fight, that victory is assured, right? There is a path through, there is another side, but there are things that we can only obtain by going through that battle. It's like there's a strength, there's a revelation, there's a recognition of even our own strength and courage and perseverance, but there are things that we can only receive in the battle itself, in the fighting itself, but not going through that battle and fight with this fear that we might lose, knowing that God has a plan, that God has a path, that God will bring us victory. Maybe that victory, that success looks a little different than what we think we want, but we'll always be okay. We'll always make it to the other side. And if you can believe that, as you're going through the difficulty, it can reduce the weariness. It can reduce how much is just weighing on you and how much energy is being spent on fear and worry and doubting the outcome, that we can receive peace instead, that we can renew our strength, that we can not have so much that's pulling against our energy, and instead allow that energy to focus on really caring for ourselves even through that process, right? When we're, especially if it's like something that's happening with somebody we care about, so often I think we can focus on our energy on trying to fix the thing, fix the situation, help the person that's in need, and we forget to actually care for our own selves. And if we can maybe shift some of that energy, of instead of worrying, instead of having fearful thoughts, if we can shift that energy to, I'm going to take time to connect with God, allow his peace to fill me, and really allow that to be healing and renewing to my own needs, so that you can continue, so that you can persevere to the end. And he says, receive and believe, that's all you need in this life, a connection to me and an open heart to receive with full belief in my provision. And I admit that's hard to do sometimes. That's hard to do when the circumstances don't change. But he says the safety he offers doesn't match up to the world's standards. I think a lot of the way that God works appears upside down compared to what we see in the world. And so if we go to God with these expectations of, you're going to answer my need in the way that the world works, often we're going to miss the true beauty, the true gift that he desires for us. So there is this need for belief that God is good, belief that God has a plan, that God is a source of what we need, but an openness to receive the way that God desires us to receive, the way that God desires to give, because often that looks different. in the long run, I think if we can have a higher perspective, when we have that kind of hindsight 2020 vision, I think often we can see the purpose in it and the why of why it ended up the way it ended up. But in the moment, it feels upside down. In the moment, it feels like it's not what we actually need and want and hope for. And so coming to God with that openness of, I believe you are good. I believe you desire my best. I believe you can give me what I need in this situation. And go to that with belief and then with openness to receive. And sometimes that receiving is just receiving his peace. Sometimes it's receiving hope. It's receiving a belief that it will get better. It's receiving strength for a moment to get you to the next moment, to come to him again, to receive again. It's this continual intentionality to shift our perspective and to not, in a way, hold it against God when we face a trial or a tragedy. That we do live in a broken world. We do live in a space where there is difficulty, there is tragedy. And if we allow that to create a barrier because it's easier to blame God than it is to acknowledge that there are things that we'll never understand in this life, if we do that, we're creating a barrier to the one who can actually give us what we need to get through that difficulty. So just this reminder that you don't face anything alone or on your own. God is always with you. God is always for you. And an encouragement to try to create an open space to receive. Sometimes we can't receive because we're too full of what doesn't belong. We're too full of fear. We're too full of worry. We're too full of trying to control on our own. And if we can intentionally release that, and sometimes that's just a prayer. Sometimes that's a out loud saying, okay, I release this. I release this situation. I release my fear. I release my worry. God, help me to release this to you. Sometimes there's even things that you can do from a symbolic standpoint, right? Is there something in your life that maybe there is a symbol of this difficulty or a symbol of the way that you're grasping on something and trying to control yourself that you can actually let go of? Sometimes doing something symbolically is helpful as well. Maybe it's going for a walk in a beautiful space versus working on your computer, researching, trying to find the solution to something on your own. But doing that intentional step of saying, I release this, and creating an open space to receive instead. And I do think that requires a rhythm and intentionality of even just creating that space for stillness, creating a space for connection. And I think also sometimes reaching out. I think sometimes we can be caught up in our own space, or we don't want other people to know that we're having a difficulty. I pray that you have friends, family, people in your life that you feel like you can actually go to and ask for help. And sometimes that can just be like, hey, I'm having a bad day. Can you pray for me? Or, hey, can you just send positive thoughts for me? You know, if somebody, maybe that language isn't yours of prayer, but I think even just having an intentionality to say like, hey, I'm having a hard time. I don't want to go into all the details, but if you can just keep me in your thoughts, send love my way, ask a friend for a hug, whatever that may look like. It's okay to receive from other people. And sometimes God actually desires to give his gifts, give provision through other people. And so if you don't have an openness to accept things, sometimes you'll actually miss out on what God wants to give you through other people, because it is a blessing. I've experienced being able to help a friend out or pray for a friend, and it's a positive experience for me too. And so I think oftentimes God uses other people because he's blessing them at the same time that he's blessing you. He's giving them a gift at the same time that he's giving you a gift. So I just encourage you to consider an open perspective. Consider if there are things that you can release and have an openness to receive from God instead, even if that looks a little different than what your first desire is. And know that no matter what you're facing, God is with you and you have an ability to connect with Him because He's in you. Connect that purest, authentic part of you, and that's where you can connect with peace. That's where you can connect with renewed strength and a supply for whatever you need, for whatever situation you may be facing. And I pray that over you. I pray that you would receive in new ways and that you would be restored and that you would be given the courage and the strength every moment of every day. Thanks for tuning in to the Sincerely God podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe and share with your friends. If you'd like more information, you can go to my website, sincerelygodquotes.com. There you'll find links to my social media, as well as an ability to get your own copy of Sincerely God, a collection of quotes, either the book or the prayer journal. Until next time, keep listening to how God is speaking to you.